Tonight on California Haunts Radio, join me for Incident at Devil's Den with Terry Lovelace. See you in a few minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to California Haunts Radio tonight. Let me get my buttons pushed. Here we go. Kind of sticky. Boy, I'll be glad when the Easter candy's done. I have lots of it, and it calls out to me, and I can honestly say I just ate a rabbit's butt. No, a chocolate rabbit. I ate a rabbit's butt. But it's neat, I don't get chocolate all the time. I'm not a person that eats a lot of sweets. So this is, it's the holidays, and that's when I do my sweets. Anyway, welcome to the show tonight. My name is Charlotte. Let me get over here. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. Got a great guest, someone who I followed for a long time. Because what happened to this gentleman is spooky. You know how I am about these spooky things, just like the Mojave incident and all that stuff. And I am all about these spooky people. Hello, Jen. And what he went through is something. Because what I went through, I don't even know if I went through anything. I just know that I lost like an hour and a half, 2 hours of time. So who knows what happened to me? Sometimes you just don't want to know. But anyway, welcome. I am the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 35 strong up and down the state. So if you happen to have things you think that are going on paranormal, UFO, Bigfoot, whatever, give us a call. Shoot us an email. We'll come out and take a look around for free. We do it to help people. Just take donations only. Like adjust this a little bit. Okay. And like I said, we're all around the state of California. And if we don't have somebody in your particular county, we'll have someone from a nearby county come out, from our staff. So that we're also in Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii. So if you need help in those states, let us know. And we can get people out to help you a little bit with that too. If you're watching from YouTube tonight, please subscribe. Our numbers are growing, and I'm real excited about that. But, you always need more and more and more. So please subscribe. There's a subscribe button down at the bottom right-hand corner of the video. And it's got a little ghost with a Sherlock Holmes hat and a magnifying glass. Please subscribe. If you're watching from Facebook, shoot us a like or two, okay? Because we love seeing comments. We want you to comment on the video. We want likes. We like to see people's reaction to what we're doing. Anyway, like I said, tonight's going to be a cool show. I have no announcements to make today for once. Actually, nope, I take it back. I've got a psychic development class that I'm teaching next Saturday, 2 p.m. Pacific. And you can reach that through the California Haunts Meetup. It's for people who think they might have psychic abilities or people that have psychic abilities but don't quite know how to handle them. Because there's the right way and there's the wrong way. And the wrong way is to open yourself up and anything and everything can come through. Because it's not always nice, okay? I teach you how to open and close the door so you can pretty much control what comes through. Okay? So if you're interested in that, check out the California Haunts Meetup. Okay, just type in California Haunts Meetup. All right. Well, anyway, again, our guest tonight is Terry Lovelace. And several years ago, I'll let him tell his story. I don't want to mess up anybody's story. It's not my gig, So let me get him on here without further ado. Terry Lovelace. Or Terry Lovelace, I'm so sorry. It's going to be one of those nights.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here. Nice to see you again.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, you got a channel that's going places.
It's starting to go, yeah. All of a sudden it's taken off. It's funny how, we started out, was real slow, and then we started to pick up, and then February hit, and March came, and then boom. It just started to take off. So we're real excited.
You cover all the cool stuff, man. I mean, I had never been to a haunted house. I had never been to a Bigfoot on a Bigfoot hunt. And last year I got a chance to do both, and they were both a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. I got a chance up in because we used to have a house up in Montague, California, up to Northern California, about 40 miles up from Mount Shasta. And we used to go into Bigfoot country all the time because it was only like a 25, 30-minute drive from where we were. And then I used to tell my mother, I'd say, hey, don't tell them I'm a paranormal investigator. They're going to put me on one of those trucks and take me. And she did, and I went, and it was fun. It was a blast.
Mount Shasta's got some pretty scary stuff, spooky stuff, weird stuff going on. So Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that our back porch used to look out on the Mount Shasta, so I would sit out there in the evenings. I was waiting for that sucker to open up on top. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
was
Oh,
waiting
I know
for,
what you mean. Yeah.
I was waiting for those reptilians to come out of there.
I got a friend who's a helicopter pilot, and he said there's kind of a no-fly zone up there, but he was flying around up there and happened to see on the side of the mountain uh, a black rectangle, like a
See?
portal of some kind, and something shot out that like you know a million miles an hour, boom, and then suddenly the rectangle was gone. I guess it closed. So
Yeah, there's stuff. I hear it's the reptilians that are way under there.
I've
And
heard that too.
yeah, and if you go into like the town of Weed, that's like right at the base, one of the towns that's at the base, there's a lot of mystic shops in there, mystical shops, and a lot of them talk about that.
Ooh.
How the mountains got aliens in it and all this. And I swear to God, we had that house for like 8 years. I used to every time I was up there, that's all I did. And my family was like, "Well, why don't you ever come off the porch?" I'm like, "I'm watching. Shh, leave me alone. Let me know. I want to see if things come on the mountain." But never did. At least not on my side anyway. I was on the north side of the mountain.
So you never saw anything cool?
Mm-mm.
Ah, that's
I
the way
was
it
bummed.
works.
I waited. And I was bummed. Even through the lightning storms. I'm thinking, well, maybe lightning storm will trigger them to come out or something.
It's like never when you're looking for it.
No, that's true. It's always when you're like what happened to me is on the freeway going to a movie. You're in the car with a friend, and then all of a sudden you notice things are looking weird outside your window, and next thing you know, it's an hour and a half later. And you're in some old town.
Man, I'll tell you, your hour and a half that's missing. I would love to. I got interested in hypnotherapy about 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and I completed a course through the Wellness Institute out of Seattle in hypnotherapy, and I've been doing it quite a bit, and getting some really unique surprises, past lives, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, have you ever been regressed on the issue of what happened during that hour and a half?
I have not ever.
Would you like to?
I would love to.
Or we should arrange that.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always wonder. It was the strangest experience I've ever had. It's the area I was in. It was populated, right? And so you could look out. It was getting dark, and you could look out and see all the city lights. As we're driving, like I've told the story before to my listeners. As we're driving, I noticed that the freeway starts to get kind of like like those photos well, I'm a photographer too, but those photos you take when you're trying to take the lights and then the smears of the lights.
yes,
That's what it started to look like out the windows. And then as I was going under the overpasses, when I was a kid, my dad always had a hatchback. So I always laid down on the hatchback and slept, when he was driving. And I remember going under those underpasses as a kid, and they whole had vines on them when I was growing, when I was little. And I happened to notice the underpasses as we were going under that they had vines on them. And I turned to my friend that was in the car, and I said, this doesn't look right. Something's not right. Looked out the window. There's no city lights or nothing.
man.
Hour and a half later, we're like 22, 30 miles down the road in some town.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote a second book, and I asked people that who've had experiences that are strange to tell me about them.
Yeah.
And to date, I've got over 2,300 emails from people.
Wow.
But I had a core of about 400 really cool stories. And I had a couple stories of people very similar to what you experienced. They're driving on the road and suddenly they're 70 miles down
Yeah.
down the road from where they thought they were.
Yeah. Weirdest thing. And we looked at each other and we went, "You think we were abducted?" I'm just going, let's just go back and go to the movie. I'm just going to try and stay calm. And, of course we were seeing, what you call Masters of the Universe. We get back and I'm like, oh, good, aliens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would love to find out what happened in that time, And for all I know, there's a bunch of little me's, with big eyes running around on some ship somewhere.
You got no way to know.
No, there's no way to know.
I had a missing time experience in 1987 when I was on a motorcycle ride. And I recall that it was seamless. I mean, it was like you were in a movie and someone spliced the film together. it was absolutely a seamless, for me, it was a seamless
Yeah.
transition. It's like I blinked. I was on the road doing like 75 or 80, and it was coming up to a curve. So I was throttling back, and I blinked, and suddenly I'm doing 35 on this dusty gravel farm road. And
Hmm.
I'm like, whoa, how did I get here?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what happened to us. I mean, like I said, all of a sudden there were no more city lights, and then everything went blurry, off the sides. And then
Yeah.
the next thing we knew, we're an hour and a half out. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's like one woman from Henderson, Nevada, who's 76 years old, wrote me about an experience she had in 1968. And we kind of carried on conversation back and forth by email. And she's like, "Look, this is awkward for me. Can we just talk on the phone?" I'm like, "Sure, even better." So we had a long telephone conversation, and I asked her that question. I said, "During this event, do you think you experienced missing time?" And she says, "Well, how would one ever know?" Good point.
Good point. Makes sense to me. Makes perfect sense. Now you have had more, and I was trying to tell people about it yesterday. You have had more than missing time, though, haven't you? What happened at Devil's Den?
I have. I can tell you the whole story.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
here we
open
go.
to it.
Let's dive in. 1977, I was active duty in the United States Air Force. And let me give you folks just a real brief bio, and then
Okay, go
this
for
will
it.
make more
See, we
sense.
got into talking right away. See, we forgot about the bio.
I know, yes, nice to visit again.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's good. It's really great to visit.
I graduated from high school in 1973 and joined the United States Air Force, where I spent the next 6 years on active duty. All six of them at Whiteman Air Force Base in western Missouri. It was a SAC base. And I finished my enlistment in 1979, completed a degree in psychology, and then went to law school at Western Michigan, and then made my career practicing law, which is why I really couldn't come forward with this story because it would not have flown well. It would not have worked. I would have been unemployed. I worked for the government. I was an assistant attorney general in American Samoa, the only U.S. territory south of the equator, for trivia buffs. And from there, I went to the state of Vermont, where I retired from there as state's attorney in 2012. So that's what happened, or that's my life in a nutshell. What happened in 1977 was I was working the night shift in the emergency room as an EMT with my buddy Toby, and he came up to me one night and said, "Hey man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And I thought I didn't know how to take him because I mean I knew he was from Flint, Michigan. I was from St. Louis, Missouri. We were both city kids. Neither one of us had ever been camping. I suspected he hadn't. And but he made a good argument for it. I had a brand new camera. He's like, grab your camera. You can photograph some wildlife. It'll be cool. It'll be fun. And it was an adventure. So we arranged a 4-day weekend in June of 1977. We drove from Whiteman Air Force Base to Devil's Den State Park, which is in the northwest corner of Arkansas. And we agreed beforehand that we would not stay in the campground. Because, like Toby said, look, if you stay in the campground, you're going to have people to the right of you, people to the left of you. They're going to be kids and other undesirables. And let's be real outdoorsmen. Let's find our own campground.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So we did, and we dodged the ranger station. We didn't buy a camping permit, and we took a gravel road we took a paved road till it turned to gravel, till it turned to dust and dirt, and came to a sternly worded sign and a chain across the road, and it said, no admittance, keep out. And I thought it was maybe some kind of nature preserve. I didn't know it, but it's actually land owned by the Bureau of Land Management. Still to this day, it's owned and managed by Bureau of Land Management. So it's federal property. It's not even a part of Devil's Den State Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to turn around, and my buddy's like, "No, hang on, I got this." He hops out of the car, and that chain had just been looped around itself with a padlock, and then they draped it on a nail on the opposing post to form a chain across the road. So he just picks it up, drops it, boom, we're in. And we felt like Lewis and Clark, right?
Right.
We drive in and we found this plateau that was really cool because the top of the plateau was absolutely level with the treetops of the surrounding forest, which meant unless you stumbled right up on it, it was invisible. But from the top of this thing, man, you had just an incredible view. And just a dirt road straight up. And we set up camp up there. And it was a very cool place to camp. I got to say that. It was just, there were a trillion stars out. And, we did all the fun stuff you do when you camp because it was all new to us.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were sitting around a campfire that night, our first evening there. And it's around 9:00 p.m. And I noticed that we were having trouble carrying on a decent conversation across the campfire, which was right between us. And we're on air mattresses, all comfortable, right? And the crickets, the tree frogs, all the stuff in the forest that makes noise at night was just so loud that we had to raise our voices to be heard. And that suddenly went, boom, just quiet. And I've heard other people tell me that. I've heard that story from other people that have had that experience. And hunters, I don't hunt, but hunters have told me they've experienced the same thing, and it kind of spooks them out too. And it did. It kind of freaked me out. And I asked my friend, of course, like he's going to know, and I'm like, hey, Toby, man, is this normal? Is this routine? I mean, this just seems weird. And, he kind of made fun of me and said, yeah, don't worry about it. The bugs will all come back. Don't worry about the bugs. The crickets, they'll come back. Nothing to worry about. And, but I felt unsettled by it. I did. And we carried on about 15 minutes more conversation. And then I noted that he turned his head toward the left and is fixated on something on the western horizon. And I'm just about to ask him, hey, what are you looking at? When he asked me, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what lights? I don't know what you're talking about. Because, we were in the middle of nowhere. The place is still in the middle of nowhere. It's still there. And I couldn't see what he was looking at because his torso was in the way. So I had to stand up, take a step back. And then on the western horizon, I saw there were 3 little stars in a tight little triangle. And they were too far above the horizon to have been lights from a train or a parking lot or something. And they were dead still. They didn't move. So I was thinking maybe it's a plane headed in our direction, and we're just going to have to wait for it to change direction by a degree or two, and then we'll see that it's moving. But we're looking at it, and it's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was interesting is that our reaction to this thing, our reactions were muted. They were really inappropriate to what was going on. You know how it is when you encounter something strange. You've encountered the unknown often enough, I'm sure, and it's like, whoa. It's human nature. You want to you want someone to validate your experience and tell you, yeah, did you see what I saw? And compare notes and stuff. And there was none of that. And then it moved, but what it did first was it rotated like it was on an axis, and it just turned. And it turned 120 degrees or so and aligned the base of the triangle parallel to the horizon. And as soon as it did that, a second or two later, it started to go straight up. And it kept that 3-light configuration until it reached some point that I'd call a ceiling, a point where it came to a stop. I don't know how far up it was, but they were just barely discernible that there were 3 separate lights distinctly. It wasn't one solid light. If it had gone a little bit higher, we may have not been able to focus and see all three of them clearly. So no idea what the altitude was, but when it reached that level, it changed orientation and kind of went. Uh, it kind of went parallel to the horizon, parallel to the ground, and that's when we saw during its descent, it had like a glide plane in our direction, and we could see that there were three lights in a row, and so one at the apex of the triangle, and then the two, on either side, lights
Mhm.
on all points of the triangle. And it did this somersault like thing where it would dip down and do a complete somersault and come around and do a 100 or 360-degree turn. Uh, and it did that twice. And while we're watching it, and I had this feeling that, I don't know where this came from, but I had the feeling that it was doing that with intent. It wanted us to know that it wasn't just out of control and tumbling, it was being operated with intelligence and intent. And that experience of calm was really strange. Years later, I broke an arm, and they gave me a drug called Versed, which is kind of a hypnotic drug that has an amnesic effect too. Um, but it kind of puts you in a twilight, puts you in a really strange place, and that's really what this kind of reminded me of, because we were both calm and sedated, and not flipping out like we ought to have been. And,
Mhm.
uh, there's no conversation. We just watched this thing glide in, and it came to a stop about 3,000 feet over the campsite. And it was big. I mean, it was the size of it was as big as a Walmart. Perfect triangle. I drew a picture of it uh, on some ruled spiral bound notebook paper back in August, like 2 months after the event, while it was still fresh in my memory. I wanted to draw a picture of it. And I kept that picture and that notebook with notes in it, which was a lot of help in writing the book. Um, and when I published the book, I took that drawing and I redid it on a nice piece of art paper with a ruler. And that drawing is on terrylovelace.com. If anyone would like to look at it, they can see it at terrylovelace.com. And that's a real good picture of what we saw. And if you're looking at that picture in the lower left corner on the ground, you'll see real tiny two little characters and a tent in my car. And I was trying to draw something to give it some kind of perspective about how big it was, but not having any skill at doing that, I'm not sure I succeeded really well, other than to get across the point that it was really, really big. So it came to a dead stop right over the top of this plateau, and we were camped kind of off to the side, so it wasn't just hanging over our heads; it was off to the side a bit. And we're laying there watching this thing, and from the underside, dead center of this thing, it shot a light down, and it was a visible white light. It had that character to it, like if you were shining a high power searchlight through fog, you see a column of white light. That's very much what this was like. Only there was no fog, of course. And the beam of light itself was about 6 inches in diameter, and it just boom popped on like someone hit a switch, and it landed right in the middle of our campfire. And I look at it, my friend looks at it, we look at each other, and it's there for maybe 60 seconds, maybe 30, I don't know. Um, and then it just shut off. But immediately after that, it shot down this red laser-like light. Now, in 1977, lasers were kind of a new thing. There weren't. I'd seen them on television, but I'd never seen one in real life. So, but I recognized it for what it was. It was a laser, and it was about the diameter of a pencil, and it was a reddish purple, and it came down and would land someplace and stay there for less than a second, and then boom, reappear at another location. And it struck me in the chest at least 3 times. I never felt a thing. I know it hit my buddy. It hit the tent. It hit my car. It hit Toby's backpack. Everything that we brought there with us, it hit. And I had the feeling, this thing's checking us out.
Mm-hmm.
It's scanning us, and that's what I believe. I believe that's what it was doing. So we watched this play out for about maybe a couple of minutes, and then it turns off. And then what's interesting is that feeling of sedation that we had, that transitioned from feeling sedated and calm to just feeling sleepy. Because there really is a big difference between the two. They're two distinctly different things.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sleepy. I mean, we were two guys. I was 22. Toby was 23. We were in the best condition of our lives, and we were young guys. We shouldn't have been sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
And all I wanted to do was to go to the tent, throw my air mattress in, and fall on top of it and go to sleep. And that's exactly what I did. Toby beat me there. And I threw the air mattress in and I fell in on top of it and I was just unconscious. And, people think, boy, well, that's really just unbelievable. Why would you have this thing 3,000 feet over your head, the size of a Walmart, and you decide to go to bed? That doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're right. It doesn't make any sense. But, I think it speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over us. And I don't think I've had people say, well, they use some kind of gas to put you in that state. I don't believe that. I think whatever they did, well, I don't understand it. It's above my pay grade, but they have the ability to do that, is what I'm saying.
The only thing I can say that sounds close to that is what I call a psychic hit. And I've experienced it myself, that when you're at a haunted location and a ghost will run through your body or connect with you uninvited, what it does is I get like a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach, but what it does afterwards is it makes you really sleepy to the point where you can't stay awake because it saps all your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where we were at. So, I had a couple of people from the near-death experience community write to me and say, do you realize you have a lot in common with near-death experiencers? And I'm like, no, I didn't realize that at all. And they pointed out to me that sense of calm, that sense of relaxation, and
yes, you get that.
wanting
Yes,
to go to sleep, and that's all a part of it. And not having interest in things that you should be interested in, or you would normally be interested in. And there were a couple other things too, but they made a pretty good argument. And I just think there might be some kind of connection between the two. I don't think ET is involved in near-death experiences. I think they're two separate mechanisms. But the process the human brain goes through might be similar for both.
True.
Yeah.
So you were really tired. You went to sleep.
You went to sleep, and then I woke up some hours later, and there were these insane flashing lights coming through the canvas of the tent.
Wow.
And I woke up, and I didn't have my wits about me. And I had to think for a moment. Oh yeah, that's right. Toby and I were camping, and that's right. And I see these lights and I'm trying to make sense of it. And I'm thinking that they must be like the overhead flashing lights from a park ranger's truck there to kick us out because we were trespassing. And I sat up and I noticed that my boots had been unlaced because I wore my combat boots, a pair of jeans, and a t-shirt. And I sat up, and that didn't scare me, but it annoyed me because I knew I did not go to bed like that. I would have taken my boots off. I would have left them tightly laced up, which is what I did. But I wouldn't have done that. one of the things they hammer into you in the military is to take care of your feet. And so I was annoyed at that.
Mhm.
And I took my boots off and was going to put them on properly. And I noticed my socks were on sideways. And of course, it never occurred to me that I'd been undressed and redressed
Right.
someone. Um, so I put my socks on properly. And these flashing lights are still annoying. And I noticed that my friend is on his knees looking out of the flap on his side of the tent. And he's staring at something. And in one of these flashes of light, I saw that he had tears streaming down his face. I could see the right side of his face in these, because the inside of the tent was pitch black until there was a flash of light. And then it lit up the inside of that tent insanely for a millisecond.
Mhm.
So he'd been crying. And, you know, that got my fear level from a 0 to about a 2 or 3, because I couldn't imagine what in the world would make this guy cry. And I'm thinking, park rangers are out there going to kick us out. Well, that ain't the end of the world for, nothing to
Right.
cry about for sure. And I asked him, I'm like, Toby, man, what is it? Is it park rangers? What's out there? And he didn't give me a reasonable response. And I got I got frustrated, and I opened the flap on my tent, on the flap on my side of the tent,
Mhm.
and I'm looking out, and I saw two things: that craft that had been 3,000 feet over our heads back some hours earlier. Both of our watches, we wore mechanical watches, which were, state of the art for the day. Both of our watches had stopped. Mine stopped at 2:40. Toby stopped at 2:42. Had no idea what time. In retrospect, we found out that we woke up about an hour before daylight. So, but we didn't know that. We didn't know what time it was.
Mhm.
And this craft that had been 3,000 feet above our heads just some hours earlier had descended, and it's now like 30 feet above the floor of the meadow. So it went from 3,000 feet to 30 feet over the meadow. And fortunately, we had camped off to the side. Um, we didn't camp underneath, otherwise, this thing had been hanging right over our heads, and that would have really been intimidating. And it was kind of cool because we had camped off to the side, which gave us an opportunity to really see up close the structure, see the sides of the thing. And it was insanely lit. Um, and it had square windows like an apartment building. And if you ever drive through, I don't know, pick a town, Chicago, Dallas, drive through the downtown section of any major city late at night, and you'll see office buildings, and windows are lit here and there, but for the most part, it's black. But
Right.
they're either cleaning or some poor souls having to do an all nighter because a boss gave them a deadline and they're working too hard. That's what this was like. Windows were lit here and there, and at the top of this thing was an observation deck. That's what I called it anyway. The If you look at that picture, the glass seemed to curve outward, and it was just this big long row of insanely brightly lit light, and we could see movement and motion, but we couldn't make out figures.
Mhm.
So there were just shadows that we could see because they were lit from the back, and we saw them in silhouette. And I saw that, and the second thing I saw was when the lights flashed, it would illuminate the underside of this thing, and it would illuminate the whole meadow. And when the lights would flash, I saw again for a millisecond, for a split second, I saw what I took to be a dozen, maybe 15 kids walking around this meadow. And I asked Toby, I said, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of this field, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? What? And he's just shaking his head. And he said, Terry, man, those ain't no little kids. Look at them. They're not human beings. And that stunned me. And that when he said that, I had just a mental image of being in there, being inside that thing. And I mean, I've never had a clear linear memory of what happened to us, but just that flash of memory. And my fear level went from, a 2 to a 10. And I was absolutely scared out of my wits.
Hmm.
And I was afraid that, one of us would cough or sneeze or do something to get to get these little guys' attention.
Hmm.
Um, and we had no way, we didn't know it, but they were long done with us. They dumped us off already. And they were typical grays. They were maybe 3 feet tall, uh, all uniform. They were all identical. Large heads, spindly bodies, long torso, long limbs. Um, and we were some distance away, so I didn't have a real good look at them. Um, but I could absolutely tell that they weren't human beings. And I have a theory about that actually. And this is nothing but conjecture on my part. But
Sure.
I think I don't think that these little gray guys are sentient in the way that you and I are.
Okay.
I think that they are. I think they're manufactured. I think they come right off an assembly line, and that's what I think. I mean, there's some kind of combination of artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, some biological material. Who knows? Throw it all together, and you got a little robot to do your bidding.
I was just gonna say because a lot of people describe them as like the worker bees.
Yeah, I use that. I use that exact word in my book. Actually, worker bees. I had a long talk with Calvin Parker, who I just think the world of. Is just a wonderful man. And at where were we? Someplace, some conference. I don't remember which one, but we're sitting down talking, and when you meet somebody that's had a similar experience to what you had, it's like there's an instant bond there. You can sit down, you can talk, and it's just refreshing. And he was talking about the little gray guys, and he also had two great big things that he said were like football. He described them like football players, kind of like the muscle guys. Um, but yeah, he told me, he said they're little. He thought too that they're quote little robots.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, worker bees is a spot on. That's what I would call them, worker bees. They're task oriented. They're they're always doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. There's no slackers in the bunch. So I told Toby, I said, man, I'm not leaving this tent till the sun comes up. And he really didn't object. Um, and we watched these little gray guys kind of wander around this meadow for a while. And then another light came on from underneath the ship and in the center, and it's from the same spot, only this was a column of white light, that milky white light that I described earlier.
Hmm.
Uh, and it, again, just like someone hits a switch. And this light was about as tall off the metal as it was broad. So I estimated it was about 30 feet. Um, this beam of light was about 30 feet tall, and then about the same, about 30 feet wide. And as soon as it clicked on, these little guys all turned their attention toward it
Hmm.
and started to make their way toward it. Um, and not in a hurry, but just at a steady pace walking toward it. And while we watched, they would step into this light in pairs and in threes, and they would just pixelate out and be gone.
Wow.
And it was the craziest thing. It was just like very much like that the old Star Trek
Hmm.
series. I've never been a sci-fi fan, so I didn't watch it except when my wife was watching it.
Hmm.
Um, a transporter, something or
The
other.
transporter, yeah.
Transporter, yeah. They would stand on a circle and they would pixelate out. That's exactly what this looked like. I mean,
Wow.
exactly like what we saw. And when the last of these little guys pixelated out and was gone, the light shuts off. And there had been a low, kind of a mechanical humming noise. Um, that, if you listen to something, a noise like that long enough, it becomes a bass line. You don't even notice it.
Right.
So when it shut off, that we noticed it then. We
Mm-hmm.
noticed its absence rather than noting its presence. Um, and we saw this thing take off, and it didn't take off like a rocket ship. It took off like a hot air balloon, and it just lifted off and went straight up.
Hmm.
The higher it went, the faster it went. It turned a little bit, and we could see it. It was, three lights and then one light and then gone. And I told my friend, I said, I'm still not leaving here till daylight. And he's like, no, man, let's get out of here. Let's leave this place. And he convinced me and I think that was the right thing to do. There's no reason to stick around there. We needed to get off of that plateau and back to civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So we ran to the car, and my car. We hopped in and started right up. Thank God. And thanks to Toby's excellent sense of navigation, we were able to get, because when you're driving on these dirt roads through the forest, everything looks the same. It's the
Yes.
same scenery. There are no landmarks to let you know where you're at. But he navigated us back to pavement, and we went home. And that was a real uncomfortable 6-hour drive. Um, and I say this to people, and they don't understand it. I don't understand it, but in these letters I got from people, um, this has happened to other people too. And that was, for some reason, here this guy was my coworker, my best friend probably in the world, and suddenly I didn't want anything to do with the guy. And there was the abduction out of Maine that I think it was in 1973, the Allagash Four. Um, there was an excellent book written by Ray Fowler called The Allagash Four.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing happened to them. They were four good friends. Actually, two of them were identical twins. And you know how close twins are.
Right.
So a set of twins and two other friends, and these guys did everything together. They hunted together, they fished together, you know, they did everything, like friends do.
Mm-hmm.
And after this experience that they had
Mm-hmm.
on on the lake off the Allagash River, um, they went back to bed. They were on the lake fishing, and they paddled their canoe into the and parked it, whatever you call it. Stopped their canoe, secured it, and everybody went to bed. These guys were just abducted. All four of them were abducted, and nobody talked about it. Nobody spoke about it, and it's kind of like the band breaks up kind of thing. They all four kind of went in different directions, and the only way that this story came to come out, I'm talking about Ray Fowler's
Right.
story of the Allagash Four, was one of the twins is having nightmares, and he picks up the phone and he calls his twin brother and says, I'm having some really bizarre dreams. And twin says, yeah, me too. And I come to find out they're having the identical dream.
Hmm.
So they ended up going to a psychologist who used hypnotherapy and helped them recover those hidden memories. A lot of people discount that and say they don't believe in that. They don't think that that's legitimate memories. Um, I think differently. I think it is. I think it is very valid memories. So,
Question
yeah.
in chat is: did either of you guys end up with PTSD?
Oh God, yes, yes. Well, I told you that we made a mad dash for the car,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to leave the tent until daylight because I didn't want to be in the open.
Right.
I mean, all I had was a piece of canvas over my head, but I felt like that gave me cover. I guess would be the military word for it, cover. Um, they couldn't see me. And to this day, I mean, ever since,
Hmm.
um, if I'm looking at walking across an open field, I won't do it. I won't do it alone. I mean, I'll walk a mile and a half to go around, but I won't cut across an open field because I'll have a panic attack. So yeah, I got some PTSD out of this thing.
And see, Jen says, "Yeah, I don't think I'd ever go. I never want to go outside again." you know, I could see that. I could actually see that. You
You
know.
know what else was kind of surprising? And I think I put this in my book, my first book. Um, I was at the mall, and it was 1987,
Hmm.
and it was right around Christmas time. And I walked around the corner. We split up, and we're both doing shopping. We didn't have cell phones, obviously. And I walked around the corner, and there was this. It was going to be a women's clothing store, and it had um, like a banquet table, and it had these mannequins, but they were only from the waist up,
Hmm.
and they were undressed, and they had their arms out at odd angles, and of course, no hair, no wig, or any facial features.
Hmm.
And I'm just walking around the mall, I'm having a good time. I turned and I saw that window, and I saw those stupid mannequins, and I just flipped out. I just absolutely flipped out, and I found my wife somehow, managed to find her, and said, "We got to go." And it was a typical panic attack. I've had a few, and they're for those who've never had one, I can tell you they're very unpleasant. And so I also have a ritual that I have to go through before I can go to sleep, and that's a little bit OCD. I don't know if it's PTSD, but it's definitely OCD.
Hmm.
Um, and I will. The bedroom door has to be open. The curtains have to be drawn tight. The closet door must be closed.
Hmm.
And if things aren't just so, I can't get to sleep. And then I'll go around and check all the doors and the windows in the house, turn on the alarm, make sure everything's good. Um, but I can't go to sleep until I get that done.
Hmm.
And sleeping in a hotel room, no, that's just really, really tough to do.
Your story's fascinating. Just to go through that, and then you have to go back to real life. So, did you share it with anybody right away, or did you guys just keep it to yourself?
Well, when we got back to base, there's some odd parts to the story. Um, when we got back to the base, we were both sick as dogs. I had a fever. Toby had a fever. Um, the only conversation that we had in those 6 hours driving north was we agreed that no matter what happens, because we both knew we were sick enough to probably have to go to the hospital.
Hmm.
And the hospital, we were all members. We were both members of the hospital squadron. I mean, these were our people, right? We
Right.
knew everybody in the squadron. They knew us. Everybody at the hospital knew we were making this camping trip. So we made an agreement that no matter what happens, we would not admit that we saw a UFO because we knew how things kind of worked, and we knew that were we to make that kind of admission, that they would ship us out for a psych eval, and it could lead to an unwanted discharge. It was really important to me. The Air Force was never a career, but it was a ticket to college. It was my ticket to the GI Bill. And that was the whole object of that exercise.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to put that in jeopardy. So we agreed not to, we agreed and we didn't want to lie. You know, we
Right.
were ethical enough to have an issue about lying about it. So we decided on this. You know, we barbecued some hot dogs, kicked back, kind of felt kind of funny, went to bed, woke up sick as dogs, and went home. So, and I threw in, yeah, we didn't care about a $10 Kmart tent. You know, we left there. We left Toby's backpack with all his stuff in it. We left this nice Coleman cooler. I left some just miscellaneous articles of clothing and stuff. All I grabbed was my wallet and my keys. I didn't care about the tent or the air mattresses or anything else. I just wanted to get out of there. So at the hospital, we were ordered to have no contact with one another. So I was not to contact Toby. He was not to contact me. And we were warned that if we disobeyed that order, there would be serious consequences. And come to find out, after talking to Robert Hastings, who wrote the famous book UFOs and Nukes, um, that's standard procedure in all branches of the military. I mean, I'm not talking about, a group of guys standing around, they see a silver disc dart across the sky. I'm
Right.
talking about something a little more intimate than that, like what we experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Standard procedure is to bust them up, keep them from communicating to one another. Two people can each validate the other's story
Mm-hmm.
and become credible, and they didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So they shipped Toby off to Japan, and I stayed at Whiteman till the end of my enlistment.
Wow.
So, but the strange thing was this that, you know, we agreed not to tell anybody about what happened, but they knew. They knew what happened. And I know that they knew um, because I was hospitalized. I had what was called flash burns to my eyes. It's like a sunburn to the cornea of your eye. It's,
Mm.
it's what an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood with the smoke glass to protect their eyes.
Right.
And so I was hospitalized for 3 days, 2 nights. And it was the evening of my second night in hospital. And they kept the lights off in the room because my eyes were so photophobic, sensitive to the light.
Mm-hmm.
And the that evening, my night nurse, who I knew very well, came in with an injection for me for pain and help me sleep. And two guys followed her into the room, into my hospital room. I had a private room. And you could tell these guys were cops. I mean, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but I mean, these guys were cops. I mean, you didn't need to work in law enforcement to tell that they were cops. And I mean, I'm a former prosecuting attorney. I worked with law enforcement. I have all the respect in the world for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mean to make anybody upset when I say that I could tell these guys were cops, but come on, you know what I mean. I mean, they
Right.
kind of walked with a little bit of a swagger. They had their suit coats were unbuttoned. I could see a shoulder holster with a weapon in it, um, and they walked in, and there were two guys, one in his mid 50s, and the other guy was maybe in his early 30s, and a guy in his 50s who was a major did all the talking, and they both pulled out ID and showed it to the nurse. And they stopped her. They said, if that's going to sedate Sergeant Lovelace in any way, it's going to have to wait. We need to ask him some questions. And then he said, and shut the door on your way out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, it's kind of rude. I mean, in retrospect, looking back at this, I think a lot of what they did that night was just theatrics. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was just drama for the sake of intimidation to get
Mm-hmm.
their point across because they wanted information from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've wrestled with this. I've got nothing. I've got nothing to prove this. Again, it's a little bit of conjecture on my part, but I had a reputation in the squadron of being an amateur photographer, and the reason I wanted to go down there was to photograph wildlife. So I think they wanted to know. I think that they were fearful that I had a 36 exposure roll of film with pictures of this thing. And boy, I
That's
wish I had. I sure wish I had. But you know what? Crazy, another crazy thing was the idea of taking a photograph never crossed my mind.
mm-hmm.
And Toby, I didn't have my camera. That's a long story too, but Toby had his camera and it was in his backpack. He reached over and pulled it out of the backpack.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of us thought. And again, I think that's that level of influence that they have over us. So they asked me a bunch of questions and wanted to know why we left all our stuff down there. And the guy said, the only thing I can think of is you were planning on going back. Um, and he says, you boys got a little marijuana plot down there. Is that what this is all about? You growing some weed out in the woods? And now that sounds kind of comical now, but
Right.
I got to tell you, in 1977, being active duty Air Force, um, had I been growing marijuana on federal land, that would have been a dishonorable discharge and a ticket to Leavenworth, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
So that scared me because I thought, what if by chance somebody did grow some marijuana down there just by happenstance? They could hang it on us. So the nurse comes back, um, gets in a little back and forth with this major about, Sergeant Lovelace needs his medicine. So, okay, so I get the medicine. And he says, that's okay. We're wrapping up here anyway. So she leaves, the captain leaves, and the major shuts the door. And the major had this unique accent, very similar to Calvin Parker's accent. And he got down next to my ear and at about a whisper, he said, son, I know, and you two knuckleheads stumbled onto something when you were out there, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And I didn't answer him because I didn't know how to answer him
Mm-hmm.
because I'd made that promise to my friend that I wouldn't, and I didn't want to be sent for a psych eval. I mean, I didn't think I was crazy, but you know, I didn't want to run the risk of I didn't want that. Um, so I didn't answer the guy. And he says, oh, yeah. He says, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. And he says, all I want to know is how many pictures of it did you take? And, without thinking, I blurted out, sir, I never took a single picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he just smiled real big because he had my answer. I knew that he knew, and he knew that I knew. We were both talking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Air Force absolutely knew what I saw.
Well,
So,
they could have been tracking it, and knew that thing was out there. And then when you guys came in, and knowing where you guys went, they were probably curious to see, what exactly it was, or like you say, they knew exactly what it was, and they knew it was out there.
well, I agree. I mean, I think there really are there really are only three possibilities, and that is that the United States Air Force and our government work arm in arm with ET through some kind of arrangement, or um, B, there was some kind of arrangement, and maybe ET is exceeding their, maybe they're allowed to take 20 people from state and federal parks a year. Because David Paulides,
Yeah.
David, the Missing 411 series, he there's an awful lot of people in not only in this country but around the globe who disappear from state and federal parks, just boom, vanish,
Mm-hmm.
or their remains are found in really weird circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there was some kind of agreement, and ET is going beyond the boundaries of their contract.
Yeah.
And then the third option is they do whatever the hell they want, and we can't do a thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's as likely as the other two answers. Who knows?
So
Yeah.
When did you decide that you wanted to find out more about what happened?
You know, I had had odd experiences for a lifetime. I mean, I saw stuff when I was a kid. I talk about that in my book when I was young. And, then I had a 10, 11-year hiatus where I didn't see anything.
Hmm.
And then this happens. And this event in 1977 really, really, rocked my world. It really, it, it, I think of it like I went down there like a teenager and came back you know, an adult. It was a major, major event in my life. And so I never told a soul other than my wife.
Hmm.
Because really, who do you trust? Who do you trust with a secret like that? I mean, that would have been a career ender for me.
Hmm.
If I was really, really fortunate, I might come out of it with a job. I don't think I'd have been working for the government, but I might have come out of it with a job, maybe still practicing law somewhere.
Hmm.
But I certainly would have lost the respect of my peers in the legal community. Um, It'd be gone. And I didn't want to risk that. And I was bound and determined I wasn't going to tell a soul ever. And then in 2012, I had that pain in my leg, and I went to the emergency room, and that's when they discovered these things, weird things in my leg. And those are also at terrylovelace.com. You can see the X-rays, and they found two sets of weird things in my leg, and that validated that these things had put their hands on me,
Right.
and that was really hard for me to process and deal with. So that was tough, and I stewed about that. Yeah, book number two. I stewed about that all through to 2016, and I made the decision I was going to speak and write about it. And that's when I wrote Incident at Devil's Den. And I self published that on Amazon.
There we go.
Now, that on March 10th of 2019, pardon me, 2018. So, March 10th of 2018, I published that. And I'm happy to say that it's sold very well. I've sold thousands of copies in 11 different countries. So I think something about the book resonates with people because I think there are people out there that have had experiences that maybe are just a little bit outside their grasp. It's just veiled somehow, hidden, and that's why that's why you might want to look at that hour and a half one of
Yes,
these days.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when did you decide to find out what happened? I mean, because obviously you were kind of hesitant about telling people.
Well, I refused to tell anybody until I published it. I had to tell an editor,
Right.
and my kids. We have two adult children, 41 and 37. I shouldn't say their ages; they'll get mad at me. Uh, and they knew that Dad would have screaming nightmares a couple times a year, um, but they never knew any of this. And my wife and I saw no need to tell them about it. Why scare them?
Right.
Why they might be the fortunate people that live an entire lifetime and never have any kind of encounter. But, it tends to be a familial thing. If Grandpa saw something in the sky, chances are you will too.
Yeah.
That happened in your family? Sure. Do you have a family history?
Not that anybody said.
Yeah. And again, it's a secret. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Nobody wants to talk about it. My mother, for years, even with psychic abilities, my mother for years denied having them. And then when she got old, in her 80s, boy, did they come out.
Yeah.
And they were real accurate. But my mother was always spooky about them, and of course, denied. Oh no, 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 I don't have those. Yeah, she was dead on. I hate to say the word dead on, but she was spot on, with stuff.
Right. I know what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're probably, throughout the life of my family, like you say, the history. There's always been weird stuff, probably.
I was when I was going through hypnotherapy uh, school. One of the instructors that we had was a clinical psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking privately. This wasn't in front of the whole class. And she's like, "Well, what do you intend to do? What are you going to do with your?" Because she knew that I had a law degree and was a lawyer. And she said, "What are you going to do with hypnosis?" And I said, "Well, I've also had some experiences." I said, "No, I don't think I'm crazy, but I've had some experiences with ET, and I think other people are struggling with it too. And I'd like to use this to help them explore and find out what really happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want to know. We want to know what happened. You want to know what happened in that hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in the meantime, I got all kinds of friends that want to quit smoking and lose weight, and they're all coming to me. But she said something kind of revealing, and that was that she said that she was surprised at how many subjects, and she had hypnotized thousands of people over a lifetime, because you know she was at the end of a career, and she said, "I can't tell you how many times that those kind of memories have popped up." And she says, "I there's too many for it to be some kind of mass hallucination."
Right.
She said it didn't meet the definition of a confabulation. It was, you know, we'll talk to somebody, like Yvonne Smith.
Yes.
Wow, she's going to run a workshop for hypnotherapist this June, and I want to try to attend that and learn some tips from her, because she's been regressing people like us for 35 years or something crazy. So she's got a wealth of knowledge and experience. So,
Absolutely. So did they, when you decided to finally get hypnotized, to regress, what kind of information came out? I mean, what kind of tests did they do on you?
I've never been hypnotized.
No? Okay. Okay.
I
Just wondered.
know this is silly because I'm encouraging others to have it done,
Right.
and I will have it done.
Right.
But I haven't had it done yet, because I only want it done by Yvonne Smith.
Sure.
So I wouldn't want some newbie like myself messing around with somebody's mind.
Experimenting.
So
You got quite the story, though. I mean, it's an incredible, scary, spooky story.
it is.
And I think right now we're reading a Mojave incident on Sundays.
Oh, okay.
And that's another one that's really spooky. And it's similar. I mean, they experienced something similar to what you did in a lot of ways.
Was that an active duty Army guy?
No, he
No.
was. I think he was a Marine at one point.
Okay.
He was just an enlisted guy who retired, got out and then had a family and everything. But they went camping up in the Mojave in the middle of nowhere, and like the whole exhaustion thing, like you talk about, they experienced that.
Yeah.
They experienced the little ones, and that was terrifying too. But yours is just as terrifying.
Well, I think, we all as human beings have a range of emotions. And you ask somebody, what's the strongest emotion? And 9 out of 10 people will say, well, love, obviously, because, you would do anything for love. You would kill for love. You would do anything for someone you loved. Um, but I don't think that's accurate. Uh, I'm thinking more of an instinct, something instinctual, something a little from the lower part of the brainstem, and I think it's fear. And I think fear is probably the most intense um, emotion.
Hmm.
that a human being can experience.
Of course. Of course. Well, I don't envy you going through that. Gives me the willies thinking about it.
Yeah. I was talking to someone. I can't remember. I think it was Fiona Harris. Uh,
Hmm.
we were talking about abduction, and she made the comment, and I think, who knows, she could be right.
Hmm.
And she said, who's to say this is an experience that's happened to everyone?
Right.
And there are a few that are able to hold on to the memory, and the rest don't.
Like you say, for all we know, there is a government agreement in that, they want to come here and destroy us, yet the government has made some kind of an agreement that, okay, you can take an experiment on our people as long as you don't come and destroy us.
And that's kind of a threat, isn't it?
Hmm.
And I was thinking it could be a blackmail kind of thing, and it could be a quid pro quo. You give us people, you give us cattle, and we'll give you a few of our citizens in exchange for technology.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, spooky, but we live in spooky times.
Do you think they've been back? I mean, like you say that there's stuff in your body. Do you think they've been back again for you, but you probably don't realize it?
That's always a possibility.
Hmm.
I had the experience in April 19th of 2019, and that's the last experience that I had. But in April 16th of 2019, I was asleep in my bed. Um, I wear a T-shirt to bed with a pocket in it, and I have a shielded old iPhone. Well, I don't anymore. I got something better now. But at the time, in 2019, I was sleeping with that in my pocket of my T-shirt with earbuds,
Hmm.
listening to meditative apps or music maybe, because it goes back to that PTSD thing where if I got something to distract me, then I can sleep. But if I don't, every little creak and noise in the house, I have to get up with a flashlight, and a gun and go investigate. And uh, so on that morning, I woke up at 5:55 a.m. out of breath, uh, and in a sweat, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I have had a couple heart attacks, and I know that thirst for oxygen is part of it. But I didn't have any chest pain.
Hmm.
So just to be safe, I told my wife, call an ambulance. I think I need to be checked out. And ambulance guys came and got me from the fire department. And, my pulse was tachycardic. It was like 180 beats per minute. That came down eventually. And then my oxygen level uh, was like 89. And then it rose back up to 98 by the time I got to the hospital.
Hmm.
So something happened to me. And I thought it was cardiac related. I thought I just had some kind of, but I know the drill. If you think you're having a heart attack, they're going to do cardiac enzymes, an EKG, and a chest X-ray. They'll do
Right.
those three things, and that's what they did for me, and everything came back fine.
Hmm.
And so they sent me home about 3 o'clock that afternoon. So I spent about 7 hours in the hospital total, but they didn't think it was worth admitting me. So I went home. I had dinner. And I told my wife, I feel well enough now. I'm going to go do my usual walk because usually after dinner I go up and I walk a mile and a half or 2 miles. So I'm headed to the sidewalk, up the sidewalk, or headed up my driveway, walking to the curb. Gonna start my walk. just around the neighborhood, and I pull up the health app on my iPhone 6. And the Apple Health app has two screens. On one screen, and there's a picture of this in this book.
Okay.
There's a photograph of the iPhone showing the readings that I got, and it showed that I had walked 6 flights of stairs.
Wow.
And what was even more interesting, it showed that I had walked 6 flights of stairs in less than a minute, between 5:23 and 5:24 a.m. There was just a spike. I mean, there's an XY graph, where the passage of time is logged from distance from left to right, and then height in 10-foot increments tells you the height, or the number of stairs climbed. It's a 10-foot in height equals 1 flight of stairs. So I said, well, that's crazy, because I live in a ranch house in Texas with no stairs,
Right.
maybe a threshold, like that much.
Right.
And I looked at that graph, and I just couldn't reconcile that. And I said, I told my wife, I said, I think they came and I think they took me last night.
Yeah.
I really believe that's what happened. And now that's something I'd like to have. I'd like to be regressed on.
Right.
1977 might be an awful lot to bite off and chew, but just one little incident. If I could find out what happened to me that morning, I'd sure love to know.
That's incredible about the steps, though. That's insane. I know I have the same issue you do. I have to have some kind of sound on at night, and the lights are on. I cannot be in the dark. I have to have some kind of sound on at night.
I still sleep with the light on. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm like you. Every little sound, I can't. I have to check it out if I figure out, or I'll be paranoid.
Yeah.
So who knows why?
I'll be scared.
Yeah.
It's that fear thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, we got stuff in common. See that?
Yeah, we do.
Sir, it has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure, and I appreciate you coming on. I really do.
Well, thank you so much.
And maybe we'll get you back on here again too if you feel like you want to come back on. Let's talk about hypnotism, okay?
Yeah, let's do that. I'll be up for it.
To find out.
Okay.
What's going on? But I really appreciate you coming on. What's next for you?
I think hypnosis.
Okay.
I think working with hypnosis. I'd like to work with some near-death experiencers, and just the adventure continues. Life's an adventure. Aren't we lucky?
Yes. We're the chosen ones. I don't know what for, but we're the chosen ones.
Yeah, we are.
And how can people find you again?
My website for the first book is terrylovelace.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a website for the second book yet, I'm embarrassed to say. My books are both on Amazon, and they're available in the Kindle version. They're available in bound books with pictures. And they're also available in audiobooks. I've recorded an audiobook for both books.
Okay.
In my own voice, for better or for worse. But I wanted it to be in my voice because my story, I wanted to tell it. So.
Absolutely. Well, you have an incredible story, and I know everybody in the chat room was really, really into it, and I know all my listeners are really into it.
Well,
so I thank you. I thank you so much, and I would love to have you on again sometime. All right?
We will.
Let's not lose touch, okay?
I agree. You know where I'm at. Like vice versa.
All right. I know where to find you. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later, okay? You have a good evening.
Yourself. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, that was terrific, and yeah, I met him before, and it's nice. It's nice, It's nice to see somebody you haven't seen in a while. Tomorrow night, we're on regular time, 6:30. We're not shifting gears altogether, but we're going to be talking ghosts tomorrow, and author Kevin Paul is going to be with us to talk about haunted Pennsylvania and haunted Appalachia. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of ghosts for that. Okay. So hopefully you guys come in tomorrow and I get at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, usual time. If you were watching it on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Our little mascot down there with the ghosty guy, the magnifying glass, and the Sherlock Holmes hat on. Please. You can find us too at CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com. Or if you're interested in the paranormal team, that's at CaliforniaHaunts.org. All right. A little ticker at the bottom. Well, that's because we don't take any money to ghost hunt or do the radio show or anything like that. But we do accept donations because, well, costs are costs, right? Everybody's going through the same thing right now. So the internet costs and equipment costs and stuff like that. So if you can find it in your heart to help me out a little bit, that would be great. That's at paypal.me at California Haunts. Or if you're uncomfortable with PayPal, how about Venmo? Okay, just go to Venmo, type in California Haunts, and we'll pop right on up. But anyway, I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank Terry especially for coming and joining us for that almost an hour and a half to tell us about his encounters. And I'll tell you, that scared me just as much as the Mojave incident did. That was really scary. And thanks everybody for listening. And I will see you. In fact, I'm going to run Terry's information right now for you too before we go. And then I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Okay? Ciao. Websites, terrylovelace.com and facebook.com incident at Devil's Den is where you can find Terry. First book is Incident at Devil's Den, a true story. And you've got Devil's Den, The Reckoning for the second book. And like he said, he has that in ebook and audiobook if you're interested in that. And that's going to be Amazon.com. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.